Hey guys, welcome back. Today we're going to do a custom catch can that vents from both valve covers. Plus we're going to do the Z1 Motorsports Plenum spacer and Z-pipe for the intake to get better airflow. So stick around. Alright, so we're just going to dive straight in. I am hooking up the fittings and things to the catch can and mocking it up in the car to get an idea of what I need to make to get it mounted. So I picked up this catch can from Amazon for $26.99, something like that. And for being as cheap as it is, the quality is actually pretty good. It has the internal baffles that you see on more expensive catch cans and a valve so you don't have to disassemble it to get the oil out. So I definitely would recommend it. I've got a bunch of links in the description below for parts and videos that were helpful for me during this build. So if you're looking for resources, that would be the place to look. Okay, so on this is where it goes. This right here is where it goes into the valve cover. So that'll need to be clamped on. Then I'm going to take this 90 and use it, and I'm going to put my AN adapter fittings onto here, and I'm going to turn it so that it runs behind the motor and then to the catch can. So that's the plan. I was pretty disappointed to discover that there was not a threaded outlet on the driver's side valve cover like there is on the passenger side valve cover. So rather than being able to run an AN fitting directly into the valve cover, we have to do this modification. And it's not as clean as I'd like, but it's behind the motor, you can't see it, it's under the throttle body, so it's alright. And it's an oil catch can, so it's not under pressure or anything, so I think it'll hold up just fine. Put the towel on there to protect the finish on this, even though this one's maybe on the motor so you won't be able to see it. But always best to use best practices, right? So this is the 10 to 8, so this will help it connect with the rest of the system. Just need to get some pipe section in there. So. Now I'm getting into fabricating the bracket for the catch can. I'm not sure which one I spent more time on, this bracket or cleaning out the intake plenum. Here I'm swapping out the cutting wheel for a grinding wheel so that I can smooth the edges. I'm seriously considering getting a second grinder so I don't have to keep swapping. As always, power grunts are super helpful. As I'm getting the bracket located in the car, I realized that I needed to tweak the power steering reservoir bracket just a little bit to move it just slightly to the side to make some room for the catch can bracket. So that's what I'm doing here. Alright guys, we're coming to the final assembly. I just used the basic cardboard template cutout idea to get started. Started with this, went inside and made a nice square one with some extra room for adjustments and mistakes and whatnot, and then bending, tweaking and everything, and finally ended up with this as our bracket. Came out pretty good, I think. Not perfect, but it's not going to really be seen that much. So anyways, get to the final assembly and we're all done. What I'm doing here is installing a felt pad at the bottom of the bracket where the catch can rests to keep it from rubbing. Alright, now it's just a matter of bolting it in place and hooking up the lines. I based my design on Project Import's kit, but the reason I didn't buy their kit was because it was too expensive. They use really quality parts and it was just outside of my price range. And then the other reason is because the way they have it set up is that the catch can mounts to the front of the motor, and I just didn't like that placement. I wanted mine off to the side. So that's the main reason that I went with my own kind of version. But their video is really helpful, and if you're interested in their kit, I've got a link in the description below. I couldn't get the crescent wrench to fit in there to tighten things down, so I covered the fitting with blue tape to protect the finish, and then used channel locks. With this setup, the filter just barely clears the hood, but it does clear it. Somehow the footage of me installing the lines got erased, so let me try and show you guys what I did. So if you look back here behind the valve cover, there you go. So you can see where the rubber hose comes out at a 90 from the valve cover, and then has an adapter from the rubber hose to an AN fitting, which only came in a 10 to fit the rubber hose. So then I have a downsize adapter to move it from an AN10 to an AN-8, and then the rest of the system is AN-8, so it runs with an AN straight fitting there, and then the hose runs here inside the engine. This is the high point. You don't want the hose to sag because it will allow oil to rest in it, and then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. And then it drops down to right here where the catch can is. So with the catch can, what I took out of this place was the hood sensor. So if you are using your alarm on your car, you won't really be able to do this mod the same way that I did it. You have to find a different spot for the catch can. But since I'm not using the alarm, it's just a drift car, I don't need the hood sensor. And just unplugging the hood sensor didn't trip anything, so it's totally fine to just unplug it and leave it unhooked. And then right here, you have to buy a fitting that goes into the valve cover here. Is this fitting right here? It was 20 bucks from Color Fittings, and it is has the proper threads to go into the passenger side valve cover, and then it switches to an AN-8 on that end. And so you need that to be able to tie it into the whole system with AN fittings if that's the way you want to go about it, which is how I did it. And then I've got an AN-8 45 bend here, and then it goes straight into this hose, which goes into a 180 bend, and then into the catch can. The catch can is a two-way in, two-way in, two-way out. So it's got two in, and then one out here in the front, and one out of the top, and I'm using obviously the top for the vent. So in the midst of this project, I also decided to replace the inlet pipe. So you can see it's this big old monstrous thing with the baffle that doesn't have good airflow. So, and the oil blow off, or the oil release valve, is at the back of this driver's side valve cover, and it goes into this pipe and puts the oil mixed air back into the intake, which means that it goes inside of the plenum and puts contaminants in there. I spent a lot of time cleaning in this project to get it sorted out. So anyways, replace that whole stock unit with the Z pipe from Z1 Motorsports, and this is basically the same as what's on the 350Z. And notice it's got the inlet pipe here, but I just have it capped because I'm running that inlet pipe to the catch can. And so it's a real clean, slick system there. So with the plenum spacer, you can see I went with the one that's narrower in the back, wider in the front. Z1 Motorsports specializes in 350Zs and G35s, so I went with the one that they sell, and it was a super duper easy install. You just undo the bolts, lift it up, put the new ones in, replace a couple of bolts, the instructions are really clear, and put it back together. However, I decided to paint this while I had it apart, which means that I unhooked the throttle body, and it's up to you whether you decide you want to do that or not, because in doing that, when I put it all back together, I had to make the computer relearn the throttle body position, which wasn't a huge deal. I'll link a video that shows you how to do it in the description below, but it was one extra step that you wouldn't have to do if all you do is just undo the bolts and lift and put the spacer in without unhooking the throttle body. But altogether, I think the whole thing came out pretty clean. Alright, so the God thought of the day. Putting in a catch can, the whole idea of it is to get rid of contaminants. The pressurized air in the cylinder head needs somewhere to go, so they vent it out through the PCV valve, and to follow smog requirements, it gets put back into the intake system, which means that contaminated oily air is being put back into the intake system. And after cleaning it, it's really obvious that a lot of oil gets through that system, right? So it took me a long time to clean the plenum and everything. And not only that, but oily air going into the intake and into the cylinder head, it reduces combustion, reduces performance, all those things, right? So that's the reason for installing a catch can, is to catch all that oil and to take it out of the system. That being the case, it reminds me of a verse in James. James chapter 1, verse 27 tells us to not allow ourselves to be polluted, or to keep ourselves from being polluted. And that's an important thing. In this life, there's lots of things that are damaging to our life,
to the plan that God has for us, and we need to make sure that those things aren't happening. So if you have stuff that you know that's not good for you and it's going on in your life, you need to throw it out. You need to figure out a catch can for your own life and get away for those contaminants to be caught elsewhere and to not continue to contaminate your life. That can be all sorts of different things. I mean, it can be different toxic substances that you're putting into your body. It can be toxic people that you're involving yourself with. There's all sorts of different ways that you can have corrupt things come into your life, but the whole point is to make sure that those things don't stay in your life, that you push those things out. And so that is our God Thought for the day. Have a great day, guys. Z1 Motorsports specializes in Zs and 350 and G35.